Very good evening, my dear friends. Today on banking sector, we will discuss about the legal protection available to bankers. The bankers, in course of their business, a lot of activities they undertake. So the question is that what is the legal protection in this regard? We have already seen justified disclosure of information by the bankers under various circumstances. In the same way, we must also understand at this juncture what is the legal protection available to the bankers. In this regard, the first aspect is the legal protection available to the paying bankers. This is the most important aspect. Paying bankers. So, who is a paying banker? Is the first question. Well, a paying banker is one who pays to his customers the money in course of the banking transactions. And then the banker is under a legal duty to make payments to his customers on a demand made by them as per the stipulations and subject to the availability of balance or subject to arrangement of overdraft facility thereon. And basically, the bankers have to follow in this regard the Negotiable Instruments Act and also comply with various provisions under the Reserve Bank of India Act and the Banking Regulation Act 1949, Negotiable Instruments Act 1881, the Reserve Bank of India Act 1934, and the Banking Regulation Act 1949, and of course other various related legislation. Invariably, the whole transactions are covered under the Indian Contract Act 1872. Then, friends, the apart from paying directly cash to the customers, bankers also would pay through various modes like checks, demand drafts, internet banking, money transfer, and so on and so forth. So, for all these things, a question comes as to what is the liability or the responsibility of the paying banker and how the protection is given. Because the banker is under an obligation to honor the checks if otherwise it is in order and money is available. So, the paying banker's failure to honor a valid check will lead to complications. Without sufficient reason, he can't do that. Otherwise, he would be liable to compensate the drawer under Section 31 of the Negotiable Instruments Act 1881. Then, friends, further, the paying banker must take proper care and caution while making payments to customers for with regard to proper presentation of demand for payment by the customers. Checks should be taken in order, date, and then still checks, post-dated check cannot be accepted. Then they must also follow the guidelines given by the Reserve Bank of India in this regard. So there are various issues in this regard which I would like to deal with one by one. One such issue the bankers should take care of here is that number one, material alteration. Material alteration means what? The alteration of any negotiable instrument affecting its operation and changes the character of the document, character of the instrument is called material alteration. Section 87 of the Negotiable Instruments Act deals with this subject matter. And then it says that any material alteration of a negotiable instrument, that is a negotiable instrument being a promissory note, a check, a bill of exchange, and it shall render the instrument void as against anyone who is a party thereto at the time of making such alteration, and then it does not give consent thereto unless it was made in order to carry the common intention of the parties. This is the most important aspect. You have to understand what is common intention of the parties thereon, which I will explain. Then, if any such alteration, if made by an endorsee, discharges is endorser from all liability. So the paying banker should take caution that the provisions of the Negotiable Act must be read as given under Section 20 with regard to inchoate instrument, the provisions given under section 87, and then section 49 relating to conversion of endorsement in blank into endorsement in full, section 86 relating to the issues that parties not consenting or discharged by qualified or limited acceptance, section 125 relating to the payment of checks crossed generally, and provisions of section 20 relating to inchoate stamped instruments. Then, friends, then what is the protection given to the paying banker in case of material alteration? This is a subject matter. It could be a 20 marks, 30 marks, 25 marks question. Material alteration. Incidentally, you will have to study it under the Negotiable Instruments Act also. The material alteration renders the instrument void. In fact, Section 89 of the Negotiable Instruments Act grants protection to the paying banker. The section reads thus, quote, where a promissory note, bill of exchange, or check has been materially altered but does not appear to have been so altered, or where a check is presented for payment which does not at the time of presentation appear to be crossed or to have had a crossing which has been obliterated. Payment thereof by a person or a banker liable to pay and paying same in accordance with the apparent tenor thereof at the time of payment and otherwise in due course shall discharge such person or banker from all liability thereon, and such payment shall not be questioned by reason of instrument having been altered or the checks crossed, unquote. What does it mean? Subsection 2 says where the check is in an electronic image of a truncated check, any difference in apparent tenor of such electronic image and the truncated check shall be a material alteration, and it shall be the duty of the bank or the clearing house, as the case may be, to ensure the exactness of the apparent tenor of electronic image of the truncated check while truncating and transmitting the image. Now, subsection 3 comes into picture. Any bank or a clearing house which receives a transmitted electronic image of a truncated check shall verify from the party who transmitted the image to it. They will revert to the party that the image so transmitted to it and received by it is exactly the same. They have to get confirmation. Thus, the protection to the paying banker under subsection 1 is subject to the provisions of subsection 2 and 3 of section 89. So, the basic requirement for availing the protection is that the banker must ensure that the alteration is not apparent to the eye and the payment has been made in due course as defined in section 10 of the Negotiable Instruments Act. The Supreme Court in this case said Bank of Maharashtra versus Messrs. Automotive Engineering Company. Bank of Maharashtra versus Messrs. Automotive Engineering Company. Reported in 1993, Volume 2, Supreme Court Cases, page 97. The Supreme Court in this case held that there is nothing in the Act which makes obligatory for the bank to subject every check to examination under ultraviolet ray lamp, though it could be prudent to examine under the said light, and the bank will not be deemed as failed to take reasonable care in passing the check for payment without subjecting it for further scrutiny and under ultraviolet ray lamp. That means the material alteration is very apparent to the eye, the banker is liable, otherwise he is not. How does it happen? For example, the date is altered, the character of the instrument is changed, amount is altered, character of the instrument is changed. So, these are all the things which are apparent have to be taken care of. Now, the second point, what is material alteration? I have already told you. The other one is protection on payment of checks and other negotiable instruments. The paying banker has to take all precautions in passing the various checks for payment. So, he should ascertain the checks bear the correct signature of the drawer as per the specimen signature. Today, electronic system, now it is almost a routine job. He should also ensure that the other related issues like the date, amount, and such things are properly carried out. And then the paying banker also must in fact, as part of professional hazards, undergoes high risk in paying the checks as he is under a statutory obligation to pay the amount of check to the right person. He must take all precautions and which are provided under Section 78 of the Negotiable Instruments Act. What are the provisions here of the NI Act? I am covering, already I covered several provisions. However, the statutory protection is available to the paying banker who acts in bona fide and then there is no fraud involved under Sections 80 to 290, 123 to 131A of the Negotiable Instruments Act, and then other, of course, allied provisions and allied legislations also. There are certain allied legislations also in this regard, which in fact we'll discuss. That is, under Section 85, read with 16 of the Negotiable Instruments Act, the paying banker is given statutory protection if he makes payment of an order check with forged endorsement, provided that the banker finds genuinely that the endorsement is regular and further the payment was made in due course. This is the most important aspect, dear friends, that it is provided under Section 10 of the Negotiable Instruments Act. This is what you have to give in the answer. Second, in case of payment of check to a wrong person in mistaken belief by the banker, the amount can be recovered under Section 72 of the Indian Contract Act, 1872. Then the banker is discharged from the liability if he makes payment of an uncrossed bearer check to the bearer in due course and is protected under Section 85 of the Negotiable Instruments Act. Then the fourth one, the banker is protected under Section 128 of the Negotiable Instruments Act in case of payments made by him of crossed checks in accordance with the instructions of the drawer conveyed through the mode of crossing. However, this protection is subject to compliance of the provisions of Section 10 relating to payment made in due course and Section 126 of the Negotiable Instruments Act relating to the requirements of crossing of checks of the Negotiable Instruments Act. The banker can refuse payment of checks and get statutory protection under various circumstances which are narrated in the further paragraphs. In fact, narrated further, I will tell you, explain that subsequently. Then Section 131 of the Negotiable Instruments Act, a banker who receives payment for a customer and pays it to him in good faith and without negligence, he can get statutory protection. So there are so many provisions. In fact, I have told you about statutory protection. So the subject in general is legal protection to bankers, and the one which we have now discussed is legal protection available to the paying banker. So with this, friends, one question we have completed, and if there is a general question, then you have to cover the legal protection available to paying banker and the legal protection available to the collecting banker also. But however, it also covers the law for dishonoring instruments or payments by a banker. This is also part of our discussion. And then, suppose there is a question on only paying banker, what we have discussed it must be enough. Suppose there is a discussion on legal protection available to the collecting banker, then it's a different subject matter which we'll have to deal with separately. So friends, we'll deal with this subject of legal protection available to collecting banker in our next lesson, followed by another one is with regard to what is the law on dishonor of payments by a banker. So these are all the things which we will further study. With this, we will complete the subject on banking, and then we'll switch over to negotiable instruments. Actually, this is the beginning of the NI Act. And in negotiable instruments, the basic thing is with regard to Section 345, where we deal with the promissory note, bill of exchange, and checks. And then basically we had to concentrate on that. And apart from that, we should also see the other aspects like the Section 138 Negotiable Instruments Act. So those things also I will cover. Then I will also cover about the Reserve Bank of India. With this, I think we can conclude our discussion for this particular academic session. So soon we will meet again and then discuss now the legal protection available to collecting banker. Thank you very much, dear friends, and then good night. Bye-bye. Thank you.